lot of people didn't realize that in 19 now, this will be our 35th anniversary for Lone Wolf. I've owned that mark now that long. I got started young, and people didn't realize I didn't even get into deer hunting for a while. I hunted rabbits, squirrels, a lot of small game. Always hung around with the older guys on the block, and started trapping, and actually started clubbing before we even started hunting with weapons. Then we got into recurves, hunting pheasants, rabbits with that. And as the years went on, for some reason, I don't even know why, I just decided to deer hunt with a bow. And went out pretty inexperienced, on the ground, literally chasing deer around, had the best time of my life, and got bit by the bug. And from then on, it was nothing but whitetail for the rest of my life.
Well, I grew up surrounded by hunting. First off, I'm, with my dad, owning and inventing Lone Wolf tree stands and being such a big hunter himself. I remember coming up as a little kid and, always, being kind of dragged around the woods, or, we'd kind of be excited to see what he brought home with during the season. I think I was just preconditioned, to the lifestyle from early on. Although I didn't really pick up the sport of hunting until probably about 16 years old, 15, 16. I had some prior outings with the old man in the woods, at that legal age of hunting, 12, 13, and I just, really wasn't into it at that time, It felt more like a chore to me. If there's one thing I can say going back, it's that, and one thing I appreciate, it's that I don't think Dad ever pushed hunting on me. He wasn't one of those parents that you're gonna hunt, you're gonna do this, and I think that's what got me back around to actually enjoying it so much. I started bow hunting. I never did any sort of gun hunting. That right there seemed like it just wasn't an option. I mean, it was one of those things where well, here's a bow. It was never, hey, would you like to gun hunt or would you like to bow hunt? It was like, no, here's a bow. This is what you're gonna hunt with. So, okay, whatever. So I was cool with that. And to this day, I've never picked up a gun. So I began to bow hunt, and kind of, was on just following around Dad in the woods for that first year. And when we finally made it happen, I think it was a morning in early November, and I shot my first buck with the bow. I mean, that feeling right there, of watching. I mean, it was a liver hit, and watching that deer mule kick and watching that blood just knowing, and seeing, how jacked the old man was. I remember walking up on that deer and seeing it, and as excited as I was when I got to it, it wasn't as big as what I wanted, and this is my first deer, mind you. So Dad scored it out, and I remember it was like 124 and some change, and I was just so pissed off. I wanted to pope a young deer. I mean, I know it might sound kind of, I don't know, it might sound displeasing to some people, but growing up, looking at just huge deer on the wall. I mean, our whole living room there was not a space on the wall that wasn't filled with the deer, and these deer were big. I mean, these deer were Boone and Crockett caliber. I mean, like net Boone and Crockett's. They were the real deal. They were big.
I did have a little bit of a mechanical background, so I basically started building my own platforms, a climber to start with. And because I had no other hobbies or no other interest, I basically, in the off season, would work on this tree stand. It was my hobby. So I'd hunt all the fall, and then the rest of the year I'd be working, and then after work I'd be making improvements on the stand. Once I made a lot of those improvements, all the guys from around the area got a glimpse of it, wanted to borrow it. Then pretty soon I started getting guys wanting me to build them, and it just turned into a business. I started building tree stands every year for guys. The word got out. It was quite a bit sturdier and better design than what was out in the market, and it just turned into a business. My wife thought of the name Lone Wolf. I was somewhat of a loner back then, didn't hang around with a lot of guys, hunted alone, and it just had a perfect fit. Whitetail hunters with a bow usually were going solo. All your gun hunters were your big pack hunters. Wasn't much into that. I did do a little bit of gun hunting. But as the years went on, then I just kept making improvements over improvements and selling more and more. Well, after quite a few years of building stands and having a demand, it started turning into kind of a hobby where, from a hobby to a business. And I was starting to make quite a bit of money doing it, and thought that possibly had some dream that I could be doing this for a living. I had a younger brother, started getting into hunting, Nick, and he actually partnered up with me. And because I worked full time at a manufacturing plant, he didn't have a job yet. He would assemble, help out with shows, and it kind of grew from there. As we did these small shows, we came up with a name brand, like I mentioned before. My wife had thought of it, and basically incorporated and started a small business out of our garage. Over the years, that business grew. We started having a few employees. Literally, we'd have not much room in that garage, so we'd have pallets of products and stuff out in the backyard, and have to actually even bring stuff in from the night before to thaw it out with snow on it to assemble it. And it just kept snowballing and getting bigger and bigger. And as my hobby grew, my talents as a hunter started growing, and I started to be successful in what I was doing. And what I discovered back then is noise was a huge factor. Noise was what was causing me early in my career a lot of big deer, and I started making and trying to silicone joints together, weld components together, and nothing just seemed to work. And I worked in a manufacturing plant in automobiles where we dealt with castings, and I had to brainstorm to go from wood to a cast platform. And when that happened, the doors just blew wide open, and we started selling them. The word started getting out, and you could not believe how quiet that platform was. I think still today, this technology of the cast aluminum platform is probably the best medium for a platform in tree stands. Noise was a major factor, and then as I got to be somewhat of a little stealthier hunter and going after bigger animals, I discovered that I call it a virgin sit. Going in a tree and sitting there for a while, you'd have some really good luck, see a lot of animals, and then the place would go dead. So I started making this stand instead of welded in an open position. I had it fold down, a little more mobile, and I started to do a lot of moving around. And I seen my success rate just go through the roof. The more mobile I got, the more deer I seen, and it just seemed the more success I had. So that's where the portable stand came in, going from a welded open position stand down to a folded, sleek, and then obviously lightweight. And I got to the point where I literally would just scout every day before I went in the woods and hunted with a stand on my back. And sometimes I would walk for 2.5 hours, never find a spot that I liked to sit, and I'd go home without even hunting that night. So the mobility was a big, big part of it, and that's where you get the lightweight stands you have now, the compactness of them, all that was built into it. And every year you'd make it a little bit better, a little bit lighter, and a little bit more compact.
As I came into my own as a hunter over the course of the years, I really started to grasp the importance of a quality tree stand. And you know, it wasn't until I used a buddy's stand on a hunt out of state, then my eyes were open at how subpar a lot of other tree stands were. Everything from how easy, the stands he designed were to hang, and how, well they transported, and, just how user-friendly they were and simple. I then started to, pick these things apart, and started to think like, well, this could be a little different, or I might change this. And I think that kind of sparked my wheels of turning and over using these things and hanging them. And, when you're hanging, a couple stands a day every day of the season for year after year after year, you start to really realize what's a pain in the ass and what's not. So I think that that led to the we've always kind of talked about it over the years, whether from hearing from customers or, Dad and I just conversating like, we need to do this to the sticks, or we need to do this to the stand, or this would be really cool, So I think it was always in the back of our mind.
My first trophy I shot, really trophy, was a Pope and Young deer that scored like 125 and an eighth. Just made it. I was always an athlete in high school, always about setting goals and records and personal goals for myself. And it gave me something to strive for. So every year I would go after a little bit bigger deer. And what a lot of people don't realize is that from my very first deer in '84 all the way till the '90s, I shot dozens of Pope and Young deer, but every one of them always was a higher score than the one before. And people don't realize that. It never ever once went back in score. So from 125, 135, 140, 42, they just kept climbing every year. And I'd know where decent deer were that were as big as the previous year, but didn't want that. I wanted to set my own personal goals, so I'd keep upping it. And I'd scout more, get permission on more pieces of ground, work harder, and it was just an addiction that just kept feeding me. And the state record for Wisconsin at the time was relatively low, and I thought to myself, anybody could shoot a deer this caliber. It was like 177, and they were killing numerous deer gun season every year that were that score. So my life goal was to try and get that state record with a bow, and I tried to achieve that. I was onto a deer up in upper Wisconsin, getting close to it, and the next year somebody shot that deer and it ended up being a state record. I thought, well, now I have to set new goals. It was so big I thought I'd never shoot a deer that big. So I lowered my goal to a net Boone and Crockett, which was 170. And lo and behold, I set a goal of that, and the following year I shoot a buck that was 180, end up hitting it. It just seemed like whatever I set my goal for, however hard I worked, I would get to that point. From then, because of those caliber deers, now they're killing all kinds of big deer. Then it was the goal is to shoot a net Boone and Crockett every year. That's what I would be looking for, and that's a tall tale. There's just not that many out there. And since then, I probably got 14 bucks on the wall that gross well over 170. 6 are probably net, and that goal I set and was achieving it. I was every couple of years I'd get one net would net 170, and then now where do you go from here? So then I striving for more, designing more, getting the stands better. My whole life revolved around hunting equipment and hunting. Now I had the time to hunt full time. My next goal was to love to shoot a 200-inch typical whitetail, which is a tall tail, and I've been in the game with quite a few. Ended up shooting a 201 gross and typical, obviously not net, but I've kind of run out of rope now with the class of deer. So as this went on and got further on the road, I had people approach wanting to buy into the company or purchase the company, and I thought, well, good time now to retire and maybe get myself a piece of ground, start managing, and maybe I could get some deer of caliber that would thrill me to go after. I ended up retiring, selling the company, but not the name, just the stands and the castings, but I hung on to the Lone Wolf name brand. I'm still the owner to this day.
The type of person I am, just very, very driven and competitive. So naturally, I wanted to get out on my own. I think, even to this day, that last hunt when I was 15 years old was the last time I've sat in a tree stand with my dad, and I think it was just a big thing to myself was like, I want to get out here, man. I want to figure this out. I want to do what he's doing, So that's always been kind of my drive. And With that being said, I think I've adapted, a lot of my style of hunting from what he does, obviously. Although I don't feel like I was ever pushed in a certain direction, as far as how to hunt or what to do, or um, I sort of just kind of, picked up the pieces just watching him for years and listening to his stories, and having that to fall back on. And a lot of times we're too proud to even ask for specific advice when it probably could have helped me. But I feel like I'm a better hunter for it. Or it wasn't until I really dove into the principle of mobile hunting that I started consistently killing good deer every year. Just the process of being in multiple locations and creating opportunities, and not dwelling on the past, I think all are very key points in success in the whitetail woods.
Once the patent was up with cast aluminum tree stands, I noticed that numerous companies were trying to come out and design their own and having problems with them. Matter of fact, 3 of them didn't make it. They went out of business. And when XOP approached me to consult and helping the endeavor, I was more than happy to do it. As you know, tree stand design has been a part of my life and a passion for years. So when XOP did approach me, a unique opportunity opened. They seen that my son was pretty heavily involved in the outdoors, and they knew I had no intentions of wanting to get back and doing kind of the show and consumer circuit. So they approached him and asked him to head up the outdoor division of XOP and the tree stand part of it. And he's been doing a good job building it and working with them since.
It wasn't too long down the road that before I knew it, Dad and I were approached by XOP, a new up-and-coming tree stand company, wanting to get into the cast aluminum market, to kind of work alongside them and develop some new products for the industry. I was immediately really excited. I had these ideas that now I've been thinking about as I've been honing my skills in the woods, and these conversations that Dad and I have had over the past years, and I was really excited to dive in and start to make those things a reality. I think from a starting point, we didn't want to reinvent the wheel. The products that Dad came out with and designed years ago were the best the industry's ever seen. They've aided in the success of more big deer being killed than I firmly believe any other tree stand that's out there. So we started by just taking his original designs and making them better. We did things like increase the step length on the sticks. That was always sort of a problem area. We made those sticks lock together with a patented system that we'd been working on for a couple years. We went to the heat treated steel buttons. There's the laundry list of things is there, and they're all little tweaks that overall make the products that much greater. And it's just been a really good time, and kind of being back in the industry, and more so than anything, just getting to use them. We're hunters, man. We want to use these products, and we want to kill deer, and that's what it's all about in the end.
My contribution to the archery or hunting industry is, I feel most proud of, is my tree stand, climbing stick designs that I think are aiding tens of thousands of hunters out there. I feel that now more than ever, but when I first got started and started building stands, something happened. I was in the middle of nowhere in the North Woods hunting, and I seen 2 guys packing out of a public hunting ground, and they both had my stands on their back. And I remember back then having that feeling of accomplishment. 35 years in the business, retired for 10 years, basically getting sick of watching corn grow out here in Iowa. And in the last 10 years, I've been not designing, but thinking of and jotting down, and have numerous products that I've been having the bug to come out with.
I'm really excited with the way things have been going. It's definitely not going to end anytime soon. Just the thought process that goes behind revamping a product to, just cater to the needs of a hunter. And I'm excited about some future projects we got coming up, and I think they're going to be great.